The wail tore through the Arizona Territory Badlands, a sound so raw and desperate it caught Caleb Reed in his chest before his mind could grasp its meaning. It wasn't the howl of a coyote, nor the moan of the wind. It was human, and it was choked with pure terror. Caleb reined Storm, his buckskin mare, to a halt on the sun-baked ridge. The August sun beat down, shimmering heat waves blurring the distant mesas, but Caleb knew what he'd heard. Someone was in dire trouble. For 12 years, Caleb Reed had lived a solitary life on his spread north of Rattlesnake Gulch. 12 years since a swift fever had claimed his wife, Eleanor, and their little Daisy within the same cruel week. 12 years of silent suppers, quiet nights, and a grief he had walled off like a crumbling homestead. He'd told himself it was enough, that silence was a safer companion than love. But that wail, piercing his hard-won peace, wouldn't let him turn away. He pressed his heels into Storm's flanks and rode toward the sound. As he crested the next rise, his heart seized. A broken stagecoach lay tipped into a shallow arroyo, one wheel shattered. Supplies were strewn across the dusty earth, as if a cyclone had ripped through them. A water barrel lay on its side. Dry garments were trampled into the dust, and in the middle of it all stood a girl, no more than 10 years old. Her blonde hair hung in dirty tangles around her face. Her dress was stiff with dried blood and grit. In her shaking hands, she clutched a sharpened stick over the motionless body of a woman lying in the sun. The girl was trying to shade her. Caleb slid from his saddle before Storm fully stopped. The girl spun toward him, her blue eyes burning with fear. Yet, she widened her stance, lifting the stick like a weapon. "Stay back," she said, her voice cracked. "Don't touch her." Caleb raised both hands slowly, keeping his voice calm. "I'm not here to hurt you." "That's what they said," the child whispered. "The men who came, they said they only wanted water." The word struck Caleb like a punch. He'd seen that kind of devastation before. Men who asked for help and left death behind. "How long have you been here?" he asked gently. "I don't know," she said. "It's hot." Her lips were split from thirst. Her small body swayed as if she might fall. "What's your name?" "Jessie." "Jessie, right? That's my mama." She swallowed hard. "Her name is Lydia." Caleb stepped closer when she didn't raise the stick higher. He knelt beside the woman. Her skin burned under his hand, and her breathing was shallow. A deep wound cut across her shoulder, wrapped in bloody cloth already soaked through. "How long since she woke up?" he asked. "Yesterday morning." Jessie's voice trembled now. "She told me not to leave her." "I didn't leave." "You did right," Caleb said. "You kept her shaded. That helped." He moved quickly, bringing water from his water skin and touching it to Lydia's lips. Most of it spilled down her chin, but some went in. No response. "We need to move her," Caleb said. "My ranch is close. There's shade and a well." Jessie stared at him, studying his face as if searching for lies. After a long moment, she nodded once. Caleb lifted Lydia carefully onto Storm's saddle. She was light, but heavy with unconscious weight. He secured her with rope and turned to Jessie. "Can you ride?" "My papa was teaching me," she said. "That'll do." He lifted her onto the horse behind the saddle. She clutched his belt with small, trembling hands. The ride back to the ranch felt longer than 5 miles. The sun pressed down like a hammer. Lydia's breathing grew rougher. Jessie held on without a word. Caleb hadn't carried anyone behind him since Daisy. The memory hit him without warning, a small body laughing, a warm hug around his waist. He pushed the memory down and rode harder. When the ranch house came into view, relief hit him hard enough to make his knees weak. He carried Lydia inside and laid her on his own bed. Jessie followed, so close she nearly stepped on his boots. Caleb worked fast. He cleaned the wound with grain alcohol. The smell of infection filled the small room, and he packed it with poultices he kept for injuries. He sent Jessie to the well for water, and she ran without complaint. They worked together through the afternoon. Caleb cooled Lydia's burning skin and changed bandages. Jessie carried bucket after bucket, her small arms shaking, but refusing to stop. By sunset, Lydia's fever broke. Her skin cooled under his hand. "She's fighting," Caleb said softly. Jessie slumped against the wall, too tired to stand. Caleb realized she hadn't eaten. He brought her hardtack and jerky. She stared at it before finally taking a bite. "Is Mama going to die?" she asked. "I don't know," Caleb answered honestly. "But she's stronger now than she was this morning." Jesse nodded and kept chewing. That night, the house felt different. For years, it had been empty except for him. Now 2 strangers slept under his roof. The silence wasn't hollow anymore. It was full. Near midnight, Lydia woke. Her eyes were wild at first, searching the unfamiliar ceiling. Then she saw Caleb. "Jesse," she whispered in panic. "She's here," Caleb said quickly. "Safe." Lydia tried to sit up. Pain crossed her face. He helped her gently. "The men," she said. "They shot my husband." Caleb nodded. He had guessed as much. "They wanted money," she continued. "When I didn't find it, they hurt me." Cold anger settled in Caleb's chest, the kind that didn't burn, the kind that froze. "You're safe here," he said. She studied him carefully. "Why did you help us?" she asked. He thought about it, about the wail, about the child standing alone in the sun. "Because I could," he said. Lydia's eyes softened just a little, and the next days passed slowly. Lydia's strength returned little by little. Jessie stayed quiet. She barely spoke, and when she did, it was only a word or two. At night, she screamed in her sleep. Caleb would stand at the bottom of the loft ladder, listening to the nightmares tear through the darkness. Lydia would hold her until she calmed. On the 4th day, something changed. Jessie followed Caleb into the barn. She watched the ranch dogs playing in the hay. One tiny runt puppy stumbled toward her and climbed in her lap. Jessie looked up at Caleb. "Puppy," she said. It was the first word she had spoken in days. Caleb felt something crack inside his chest, something that had been locked tight for 12 years. "That's right," he said quietly. "That's a puppy." That night, after Jessie slept, Lydia sat across from him at the table. "You live alone?" she said. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I lost my family," he answered. "And I didn't know how to live around people after that." She didn't press him. She only nodded. "I lost mine too," she said. They sat in silence, but it wasn't heavy. It felt like understanding. 3 weeks passed. Jessie began to talk again. She learned her letters from a scuffed Bible Caleb found in a trunk. She asked questions about everything. The house filled with the smell of baking bread and the sound of small laughter. Fresh wildflowers in jars appeared in the windows. Herbs hung by the door. The ranch didn't feel like a grave anymore. One afternoon, Caleb rode into Rattlesnake Gulch for supplies. When he returned, something was wrong. 3 horses stood outside his house. A man held Jessie by the arm. Another had Lydia by the hair with a knife at her throat. Caleb didn't think. He acted. The first man fell before he understood what happened. The second died, running from the door. The third pressed the blade harder against Lydia's skin. "Stop," he shouted. Caleb's Winchester 73 didn't shake. "Let them go." The man laughed. Lydia's voice cut through the moment. "You work for my mother," she said. The man's eyes flickered. Caleb fired. The body hit the dirt. Silence followed. Jessie sobbed. Lydia clung to him. Caleb held them both as the dust settled around 3 dead men. Something dark stirred in him, something he had buried years ago, and it scared him. That night, after the bodies were buried, Lydia found him sitting alone on the porch. "You scared yourself today," she said. "Yes," he answered, "but you saved us." He looked at her, at the woman who had survived so much, at the child sleeping inside. "I don't know what kind of man I am," he said. "You're the kind who protects," she replied. He didn't know if that was true. But inside the house, Jessie slept peacefully for the first time since he had found her. And for the first time in 12 years, Caleb Reed didn't feel alone. The morning after the shooting, the ranch felt different. Not quieter, not louder, just changed. 3 fresh stone cairns stood beyond the barn. Caleb had buried the men before sunrise. He didn't pray over them, but he didn't curse them either. He simply covered them with dirt and walked away. Inside the house, Jessie refused to let go of Lydia's hand. Lydia moved carefully, her shoulders still healing, but her eyes were sharp now. Fear hadn't left her. It had turned into something else, resolve. Caleb cleaned his Winchester at the table. The metal shone in the early light. "Those men," Lydia said finally, One of them was named Slade. Caleb looked up. You know him? I didn't know him, but I knew the name. Her voice was steady but tight. My mother employs men like that. The words settled heavy between them. Your mother, Caleb repeated. Matilda Blackwell from the shipping families. Lydia stared at the window, as if she could see across the vast country. She doesn't forgive. She doesn't forget. And she sent men to kill your husband? Lydia nodded once. While they were meant to scare us, Silas fought back. They shot him. After that, things went too far. Caleb felt the cold anger return. Not wild, not blind, just clear. Why would she care what you do out here? He asked. Lydia hesitated. There's something I didn't tell you. Caleb set the rifle down slowly. My father died 3 months ago, she said. In his will, he left a trust for Jesse. $200,000. Caleb stared at her. And your mother controls it? No, the guardian does. Whoever has legal custody of Jesse has control over that money until she turns 21. The room went still. So, this is about money, Caleb said. Yes, and you didn't tell me. Lydia's voice broke. Silas didn't even know about it. I didn't want that money. I wanted freedom from that house from her. Caleb stood and walked to the door. He stepped outside and stared across the land. He had killed for them, risked everything, and there had been this secret sitting between them. Lydia followed him out. I was afraid, she said quietly. Afraid that if you knew, you would think I only stayed here because of the ranch, because of protection. Caleb turned to face her. Is that what you think of me? No. She shook her head quickly. I think you're the only decent man I've known in a long time. Silence stretched. Inside, Jesse's laughter drifted from the loft where she was talking to the puppy. Caleb exhaled slowly. What happens next? He asked. My mother won't stop, Lydia said. Not now. Not after those men failed. As if summoned by her words, a rider appeared on the horizon 2 days later. He wore a fine suit despite the dust. His horse was too clean for ranch work. His posture was stiff and careful. Caleb met him in the yard with his rifle resting in his arms. Help you? Caleb asked. My name is Elias Finch, the man said smoothly, attorney for the Blackwell family. Lydia stepped onto the porch. Finch smiled when he saw her. Lydia, you look well considering your recent misfortune. What do you want? She asked. Finch pulled folded papers from his satchel. A petition for custody. Your mother is prepared to assume full guardianship of Jesse Thorne. Jesse appeared in the doorway behind Lydia, eyes wide. She's my daughter, Lydia said. And your mother is her grandmother, Finch replied calmly. A grandmother with resources, education, influence. Caleb stepped closer. She's not going anywhere. Finch's eyes shifted to him. And you are her husband? Finch blinked. You are not married. Not yet, Caleb said evenly. Lydia turned sharply toward him. Finch gave a thin smile. You have 1 week to respond to this petition. There will be a hearing in Tucson. He handed the papers to Lydia and mounted his horse. As he rode away, dust swirling behind him, Lydia's hands shook. She'll try to take her, she whispered. Caleb looked at the house, at Jesse standing in the doorway, at the life forming here piece by piece. Not if we stand in the way, he said. That night, Caleb rode to Rattlesnake Gulch. The rail station telegraph office was still open. Gus looked surprised to see him. Need to send a wire, Caleb said. He wrote a message to an old friend in Tucson, a lawyer named Sam O'Connell, a man who owed him from years back. The next afternoon, a reply came. Sam would take the case. Caleb returned home with more than supplies. He returned with a plan. At supper, he laid it out. Sam says judges don't like rich people buying children, Caleb said. But he also says they'll question our situation. Our situation? Lydia repeated. We're not married. The words hung heavy. Jesse looked between them. Are you going somewhere? She asked suddenly. Lydia reached for her hand. No, sweetheart. Caleb looked at Lydia across the table. There's one thing that would make this stronger, he said. She understood before he finished. Marriage. Jesse's eyes widened. You mean Papa for real? She asked. The word hit Caleb like a bolt. He hadn't asked her to call him that. She had simply started. Lydia swallowed. This would be for protection, she said carefully. For Jesse. Yes, Caleb answered, but there was more under the surface. They both felt it. Why would you do this? Lydia asked quietly. After I kept the money from you? Caleb looked at Jesse. Because she needs stability, he said. Because this house isn't empty anymore. Because I would rather fight beside you than watch you lose. Lydia studied his face. All right, she said softly. Partners. The wedding took place 3 days later in the small church at Rattlesnake Gulch. Pastor Miller officiated. His wife Agnes stood witness. Jessie held a bouquet of desert blossoms she picked herself. Caleb wore his best denim. Lydia wore her travel dress. When the vows were spoken, they didn't feel like romance. They felt like a shield. Outside the church, Elias Finch watched from his horse. How touching, he said. A timely union. Caleb met his gaze without blinking. She is my wife now. Jessie is my daughter. Finch tipped his hat. We'll see what the judge says. The next week passed in preparation. Sam O'Connell arrived in person. He was sharp and quick with restless eyes. They'll try to paint you as unstable, he told Caleb. A violent man quick to kill. I killed men trying to kidnap a child, Caleb said. And you must stay calm when they say otherwise. Caleb nodded. Lydia gathered letters from neighbors. Pastor Miller prepared statement. Mabel Jenkins from a general store insisted on testifying about the changes she had seen in the house. 2 nights before the hearing, Caleb woke to a wail. Not from outside, from inside the house. He ran to the loft. Jessie's bed was empty. The window was open. On the pillow lay a folded note. Lydia stood frozen, the paper shaking in her hands. I told you I always get what I want, she read aloud. Withdraw the petition or you will never see her again. Mother. The world tilted. She took her, Lydia whispered. Caleb felt something inside him go still, then hard. Get dressed, he said. We ride now. They rode through the night toward Tucson. No stopping, no resting. Lydia didn't cry. She didn't speak. Her face was set like stone. Sam met them at dawn with news. Matilda Blackwell is staying at the Grand Paragon Hotel, he said. 4 guards at least. I'm getting my daughter back, Lydia said. It's too dangerous, Sam warned. Caleb shook his head. We don't have time. The Grand Paragon Hotel rose 3 stories above the dusty street, brick and false elegance. Caleb walked through the front door like a man with purpose. He raised his voice, demanded service, drew attention. Guards moved toward him. While they argued, Lydia slipped through the back entrance. Sam had shown her the layout. 3rd floor, room 12. 2 men outside the door. Lydia grabbed a silver platter from a maid's cart and walked straight toward them. Room service, she said. One reached for the platter, but she smashed it into his face. The other went for his gun. Lydia fired first. The shot echoed through the hallway. The man fell. Her hands shook, but she didn't stop. She burst into the room. Jessie sat on the bed, eyes red from crying. Manga. Lydia grabbed her. They ran for the stairs. At the end of the hall stood Matilda Blackwell, dressed in a velvet gown, a sapphire brooch at her throat, face cold as winter. You never could accept what was best for you, Matilda said. You had Silas killed, Lydia said. He chose to fight, Matilda replied coolly. That was his mistake. Lydia raised the gun. Move. You will not shoot me, Matilda said. I already have, Lydia answered. For the first time, Matilda stepped aside. They reached the street where Caleb was fighting off guards. He saw them and fired twice, yet they mounted horses and rode. A bullet caught Caleb in the shoulder. He didn't slow. They rode until the town disappeared behind them. Only then did Lydia see the blood soaking his shirt. You're hurt. I'm Fina. You are not. By the time they reached Sam's office, Caleb was pale. But when Sam said the hearing was still scheduled for morning, Caleb straightened. We finished this first, he said. Lydia took his hand. Together, and for the first time, the marriage that had begun as protection felt like something stronger. Tomorrow they would stand in court. Tomorrow everything would change. The courtroom in Tucson was packed before the sun had fully climbed the sky. Word had spread fast. A wealthy shipping family, a rancher shot in a rescue, a child at the center of it all. Caleb sat at the wooden table with his arm in a rough bandage. The cloth beneath his shirt was already stained through. Every breath sent a sharp pain across his shoulder, but he didn't move. Lydia sat beside him, her spine straight, her hand resting over his good one. Jessie sat in the front row with Agnes Miller, holding her small carved wooden bird tight against her chest. Across the room sat Matilda Blackwell. Her velvet gown was perfect, her posture flawless. If not for the thin line of fury in her eyes, she could have been attending a social luncheon instead of a custody hearing. Elias Finch stood at her side, papers stacked neatly in his hands. Judge Beaumont entered. The room fell silent. "We are here to determine custody of Jessie Thorne," the judge said. "Mr. Finch, you may begin." Finch rose smoothly. "Your Honor, this is a matter of stability and future security. My client, Mrs. Matilda Blackwell, is a woman of wealth, refinement, and resources. She can offer this child education, safety, and opportunity far beyond what a remote ranch can provide." He paced slowly. The mother, while no doubt affectionate, has shown questionable judgment. She brought her daughter into dangerous territory. She married a man with a history of violence. This is not a stable environment. The words hung heavy. "Sam O'Connell stood." "Your Honor, the Blackwells showed no interest in this child until a large inheritance became available. The trust left by Edward Thorne places control of $200,000 in the hands of Jessie's guardian." A ripple moved through the courtroom. "This case," Sam continued, "is not about love. It is about control." Matilda's jaw tightened. She took the stand first. Her voice was calm, polished, practiced. "I love my granddaughter," she said. "I only want what is best for her." Sam stepped forward for cross-examination. "Mrs. Blackwell, did you hire men to intimidate your daughter and her husband?" "No." "Did you employ a man named Slade?" Matilda hesitated for half a second. "I may have hired private security." "Security that left Silas Thorne dead?" Murmurs filled the room. Matilda's mask slipped just slightly. "My daughter married beneath her station," she said coldly. "She made reckless choices. I try to protect her from herself." "And kidnapping your granddaughter was protection?" Matilda did not answer. Then Lydia took the stand. She told everything about the attack on the plains, about Silas being shot, about the wound on her shoulder, about Jessie standing in the sun trying to shield her. Her voice never broke. When Finch cross-examined her, his tone sharpened. "Mrs. Reed, you admit you married Mr. Reed quickly, under pressure. Is this truly a loving marriage?" Lydia's eyes moved to Caleb. "It began as protection," she said honestly. "But protection can grow into something stronger." Finch smiled thinly. "How convenient." Sam objected. Sustained. Then Caleb was called. He stood slowly. The pain in his shoulder burned, but he ignored it. "Mr. Reed," Finch began, "you have killed men, have you not?" "Yes." "In the past? And recently?" "Yes." "So, you expect this court to believe you are a safe guardian for a child?" Caleb looked directly at the judge. "I killed men who were trying to hurt my family," he said calmly. "I do not regret protecting them." Finch pressed harder. "You nearly beat a man to death years ago in Tucson." "He insulted my dead daughter," Caleb replied. "I lost control. I have spent 12 years making sure that never happened again." "And yet you continue to kill." Caleb's voice did not rise. "I continue to protect. They're not strangers to me. They're my wife and daughter. I would stand between them and anything that tries to hurt them. That is not violence. That is responsibility." The courtroom fell silent. Judge Beaumont leaned back in his chair. When both sides finished, he removed his spectacles slowly. "This court is deeply concerned by the actions of Mrs. Blackwell," he said. "The kidnapping, the evidence of hired men, and the timing of this petition in relation to the trust fund raise serious doubts about her motives." Matilda's face turned pale. "However," the judge continued, "I also require assurance that this marriage is not a manipulation of circumstance." He looked at Caleb and Lydia. "There is a simple way to prove your intentions. If you both sign documents renouncing control of the inheritance, allowing it to be managed independently until the child reaches adulthood, this court can be certain that money is not your motive." The room held its breath. Lydia did not hesitate. Prepare the papers, she said. Caleb nodded once. My daughter is not for sale. Matilda's composure shattered for the first time. You fools, she hissed under her breath. The documents were signed. Judge Beaumont struck the mallet. Custody of Jessie Reed is awarded to her mother and stepfather. Furthermore, based on evidence presented, Mrs. Matilda Blackwell is to be detained, pending investigation into charges of conspiracy and kidnapping. Territorial marshals stepped forward. Matilda's eyes locked with Lydia's as she was led away. There was no apology in them, only defeat. Jessie ran across the courtroom and threw her arms around Caleb's waist. Can we go home now? She whispered. Caleb looked at Lydia. Yes, he said softly. We're going home. They left Tucson that afternoon. The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Jessie slept against Lydia's side, worn out from fear and relief. Caleb guided the wagon slowly. His shoulder throbbed, but his heart felt lighter than it had in years. You could have kept the money, Lydia said quietly. I don't need it, Caleb replied. I need you safe. She watched him for a long moment. You didn't ask me to stay after this, she said. Caleb's hands tightened on the reins. I would never trap you, he said. If you decide this was only about survival, I will not hold you. Lydia reached across and touched his arm carefully. This stopped being survival a long time ago. He looked at her then, truly looked. I love you, he said, and the words were rough and honest. Lydia smiled through tears. I love you too. When they reached the ranch, the sun was setting. The small house stood against the wide Arizona sky, smoke rising from the chimney. Jessie jumped down first and ran toward the porch. Home, she shouted. Caleb helped Lydia down gently. They stood for a moment in front of the house. A year passed. The ranch grew. New stone walls, a bigger well house, sturdy shutters in the windows. Jessie turned 11. She still hid small trinkets in a boot sometimes. She still woke from bad dreams now and then, but she laughed more than she cried. She called him Papa without hesitation. One warm evening, Caleb rode to the rise where he had first heard that wail. The grass had grown back. No sign of stagecoach wreckage, no blood, no reminder of the worst day, only wind and open sky. From the house, Jessie's voice carried on the breeze. Papa, super. He smiled. Coming, he called. He turned storm toward home. Lydia stood in the doorway when he arrived, one hand resting on her rounded belly. 6 months along, a new life on the way. You're late, she teased. Fence trouble, he replied. They ate together at the table that once sat empty for 12 long years. After supper, Caleb read a story while Jessie curled beside him. She fell asleep before the ending. He carried her to bed. When he came back downstairs, Lydia was waiting by the fire. You're thinking, she said. A year ago today, he answered. She nodded. You stopped writing, she said softly. I almost didn't, but you did. Caleb took her hand. I was tired of being alone, he said. I just didn't know it yet. Lydia leaned against him. Sometimes, she said, second chances come screaming. He smiled at that. The lantern by the window burned bright against the dark plains. For 12 years, Caleb had come home to shadows. Now he came home to light, to laughter, to love. He had feared the darkness inside him, fear that it made him something broken. But he had learned something greater. Darkness can protect when guided by love. And choosing to love again after loss is not weakness. It is courage. Inside the small ranch house under the endless Arizona sky, Caleb Reed finally understood. He had not just saved a woman and her child. They had saved him, too. And this time, he would never ride past the whale.